Really excited because he feels like a solution for today rather than a solution for tomorrow. And I think for a long time, Arsenal have been doing business in the attacking areas, and you've been going, I'm not sure if that makes much sense. I'm not sure about where they fit in. And sometimes we've gone for players that are at the back end of their careers. If you go back a few years, Willian, you look at Raheem Sterling coming in, thinking that those guys could maybe plug a hole for us. And in this instance, we've gone and got someone who's ready now, but obviously still has plenty of good years ahead of him as well. So the number 9 has been something that Arsenal fans have been crying out for such a long time. And there was a bit of nervousness. There has been a bit of anxiety, I would say, within the Arsenal fan base over the course of the last week, because last Sunday we heard that Arsenal were in advanced talks, and then it was radio silent for a whole week. And all we kept hearing about was this impasse and this problem between the two clubs, and this unwillingness on both sides to compromise in any way, shape or form. And it looked like the deal could potentially be off. That's what the reports coming out of Portugal were telling us. And obviously we got the news on Sunday that Arsenal have made some progress, and now it's all systems go. And Arsenal are getting a goal scorer. They're getting a player that's got experience of English football, albeit not at the highest level. But I think that will help him in his adaptation. And I think this is a signing that Arsenal fans should be excited about.
Yeah, how do you feel about the kind of naysayers, if you want, who will say, well, he's only been doing it in the Portuguese league and he's only really played in the Championship for Coventry. So, that step up to Arsenal and helping them become title challengers will be too much for them. What do you think about the people who say that?
It's snobbery, in my opinion. And I say that because, listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit there and pretend that when I looked back at sort of Viktor Gyökeres' career history, I was blown away. And it didn't ring an alarm bell within my own mind. Of course it does. But then I started to think about it, and I started to think about other examples of players that, have done it in a sort of slightly non-conventional way, but have found their way to the top of the game in the end. And think about the desire and the fight that those guys have had to show along the way. And they're almost more grateful when they land at a club like Arsenal, because they know about how much graft it's taken to get to that point. And sometimes you see those players thrive. Olivier Giroud didn't come to a big club in England for a long time, and then he seemed to get better and better with age. And by the time he sort of left English football, everyone was looking back and going, this is a pretty decent striker.
Like Olivier a fine wine,
Giroud. Yeah, he just matured, didn't he, as the years went on. Jamie Vardy's another great example of a player who had to do it from non-league all the way up, and then in the end has put his name in Premier League folklore. So I think there's a lot of examples of players that have gone down this similar type of route and have really made it work. So I don't think it's fair to write off Viktor Gyökeres on that basis.
Yeah, in terms of the other business that they've done as well, and we'll get into a bit more detail on Madueke, but let's say that that's part of it too, because it looks like he's coming in for around 52 million. So you've got Madueke, you've got Norgard, who's come in as well, Kepa, and then Zubimendi, along with Gyökeres. Does that window put their squad on the same level as the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City?
It's difficult to say. Because obviously the window's not closed yet, and I still believe that Arsenal will go and get one more. I think they're going to get, Christian Mosquera is pretty much done as well, so I think they're going to get another attacker on top of that as well. I've got my eyes on Eberechi Eze, and I'm hoping that Arsenal move for him, and I think that's a very doable deal. Will it put the squad on par? Look, I think if you look at some of the signings in isolation, right, it's easy to feel a little bit underwhelmed. And I've felt that way in the window so far. Kepa Arrizabalaga, nobody's against that signing because it's £5 million for a backup goalkeeper, a very experienced one at that. And you go, okay, it makes sense, but it isn't one that's going to get me off my seat. No. Christian Norgard, again, it makes a lot of sense. The price makes a lot of sense. His experience, I'm sure, will prove invaluable to Arsenal. But was it one that got me off my seat? No. Martin Zubimendi would have ordinarily got me up off my seat, but we knew about it from January, which has taken away some of the kind of excitement around that.
Has it almost been kind of to do with PR? Do you know what I mean? If they'd done all these at the end of the window, everyone go, oh, that's a nice bit of business. But it was kind of, they were signing Kepa and signing Norgard, and everyone knew about Zubimendi, as you said, whilst Liverpool were out getting Wirtz or Man City were getting Cherky through the door. And now, actually, if you flip it around, Arsenal are getting Gyökeres through the door and looking like they're getting some attacking signings too. Madueke, though, and this has caused a lot of controversy, really, and especially for the fee as well, because it's looking around £52 million. Do you see a player there that is, firstly, worth that kind of money, and secondly, definitely improves Arsenal?
Well, you made the point just there about PR and the perception around certain business. Had Noni Madueke been signed after Arsenal got the Viktor Gyökeres thing wrapped up, the viewpoint of it would be very different. You'd be looking at it and going, okay, I might not be in love with this deal or this idea, but we've got our striker in and this supplements that.
Yeah.
Whereas because people were so frustrated over the course of the last week with the lack of progress on the Gyökeres front, and in the meantime, you're hearing of Arsenal failing to pay this additional money to Sporting and being completely unwilling to do so while dropping a total of 52 million on Madueke. That has contributed to the outrage, if you like.
And another Chelsea player.
Yeah, and another Chelsea player. Listen, Noni Madueke for me as a signing, it's kind of neither here nor there for me, right? I look at him and I think he's got some attributes that Arsenal don't have. He's spontaneous. He breaks out of the system. He dribbles. He's not afraid to take shots. I think these are things that Arsenal could do with more of, particularly when they face low blocks.
Do you think he starts on the left then? Are we looking at a guy who's just going to be... They're surely not paying that much money for him to simply be a Saka backup. But does he start ahead of Martinelli? Is he better than Martinelli?
I don't think he necessarily comes in and takes over from Martinelli straight away. But I do think he'll be viewed as an option from the left-hand side as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if Leandro Trossard left as well. So if Madueke is then your cover for both flanks, then that will be Arsenal's way of justifying that extra bit of cost. But the cost is the key point here.
It's a lot of money.
That's the key point here. People, I think, have mistaken the Arsenal fan reaction in most cases for being about Noni Madueke, and it's not. It's about the price.
Yeah.
And it's about the fact that there's a bit of fatigue among Arsenal fans when it comes to going and giving Chelsea money. Like, that rivalry might not exist at boardroom level. Clearly it doesn't, because I think he's the, 7th player in 6 years or something like that to make that switch.
And let's be honest, they haven't all worked out.
Exactly. But for us as fans, that's where the majority of the frustration comes from. It's not that, there have been people going online and sending Madueke all sorts of stupid messages. That doesn't represent the vast majority of Arsenal fans. That's a bunch of faceless idiots online that got nothing better to do. And what was it that Mike Tyson said? Social media has made you all way too comfortable with saying stuff that would get you a punch in the face. And he's absolutely right. And that's what's happened here. Yeah. But look, it's not really about Noni Madueke. I think as a player, I think he can be of use to us. If we had paid £30 million for him, I'd be looking at it and going, fine. That's actually a decent bit of business.
52
that's the problem.
It's a lot of money, isn't it? Let's be honest. So you were talking about Eze there. What makes you so excited by that as a potential signing for Arsenal?
Again, Eze would bring a lot of what Arsenal don't have. The dribbling ability, the ability to kind of work magic on the edge of the box. He can play from the left, but I think we could use him in central areas as well. When you see him dribble, he drags players into him, which creates space for others. I think he's become a much better box crasher under Oliver Glasner as well, which is why he's scoring more and more goals.
Saw that in the cup final.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a history with Arsenal. I think Crystal Palace obviously have this release clause in place of around about 67, 68 million pounds. Yeah. But realistically, because he's got 2 years left on his contract, this feels like the last summer that Crystal Palace can really make big money for him, because next summer he'll be going into the final year of his contract. No one's going to pay 68 million for a 28-year-old. They're going to wait until the contract expires. So I think if I'm Crystal Palace, even if Arsenal come with 60, 65, if the player really wants it, and I'm looking at it from a business point of view, which unfortunately clubs like Crystal Palace have to, then I think there's a good chance Arsenal make this happen.
And the other thing with that is Mark Gahey, we know, isn't going to sign another new deal, and he's only got a year left.
You can't use another one, can you?
I mean, they could have got 70 million for him last summer when Newcastle were chasing him. But to be fair, it's paid off, hasn't it? They won the FA Cup. They had a most memorable season that they've ever had. So it was worth doing it. But it might mean that they want to cash in more on Eze.
Yeah, you can't keep doing that if you're Crystal Palace, can you? You can't keep... And as much as we all want to believe that football clubs prioritise football and on-the-pitch ability and results above everything else, we know that they're businesses. We know that there's some very stringent PSR rules in place. And and obviously being demoted from the Europa League down to the Conference League as well, financially that has ramifications too.
Definitely. Right, so with Arsenal, we've already talked about their window. There might be some more signings to come, including, like you've just said, Eberechi Eze, but they're getting that number 9 through the door, which for so long people have looked at as the kind of missing piece. So what does Arteta need to achieve for you as a fan next season?
He needs to win. He needs to win, but
I guess, when you say win, do you mean either the Premier League or the Champions League, or both, obviously? But do you mean one of those two?
Well, both, obviously. But no, look, jokes aside. No, look, I think for me, this is a project that's been built with a view to winning one of the big ones. Now, if he wins the FA Cup, for instance, and Arsenal are competitive in the league again and go far in the Champions League, I think most sensible Arsenal fans will say, okay.
Won't wash with all of them, though, will it?
It won't wash with all of them, though. No. And that's where I get irritated by this insistence on it being about silverware. Silverware is ultimately what we play the game for, and you want to win it, of course. But if Mikel Arteta won the Carabao Cup but finished 4th and didn't progress past the league phase of the Champions League, those people that are saying it's only about winning, what, are they all going to be quiet and sit there and say, this was a brilliant season because we won trophies? No, they're not. So you got to be realistic. Like, for me, you got to compete on multiple fronts. You've got to be competitive in the 2 big ones first and foremost. If you can win a domestic cup as well, that would be amazing. But I'm after the big 2. That's what this project has been built for. That's where
and has to happen next season.
It has to happen. Yeah, it has to happen.
I have one more quick question for you. I'm really interested in this. When we're talking about potentially Eze coming in, what does that mean for Kai Havertz? Do you think? What happens with his role in the team? Because for me, the only role I then see him having is as a backup number 9. Do you know? Because for me, he then becomes what, 3rd choice number 10, surely, because you've got Odegaard and then Eze ahead of him. Your midfield's stacked now, which is what he was initially brought in for primarily. Do you then look at that transfer? And I know he's been decent for Arsenal. He's had the injury problems, of course, as well, but you then look at the fee they pay for him and think he's there as a kind of backup striker, and he's not even, that's not even his natural position. And I know he's this kind of utility player, but yeah, I mean, how do you reflect on the fee you paid for him when you look at how his career could end up looking if these other players are brought in?
When we first signed him, I remember recording a podcast and calling him a Swiss Army knife because he can play in so many different positions. And it's not just that he can play in those forward positions. Having him in the team when you're defending set pieces is massive. He stands on the near post and he clears pretty much everything. He's got lots of uses. I think he could play as one of the 8s. I think he could play as a 9. I don't think you'll find a better second choice 9 in the league than Kai Havertz, by the way. I think he can play as a second striker because I think Mikel Arteta would quite like to at certain times be able to drop either Rice or Odegaard deeper with Zubimendi and stick an extra body up front when you're trying to break someone down. I think he'll get more than his fair share of minutes. I'm honestly not worried about that. I think last season taught us the lesson that we need bodies, and he's one of them.